Hey peeps, welcome to another video. Today it is part 3 of the Vogue 8972 Sew-AlLong. Today we're going to be installing the neckband, sewing our sleeves in flat, sewing up the side seams and trying on for fit, and once you've got the fit that you want, finishing our dress. So let's get started. So once our shoulder seams are stabilised with the elastic, we're then going to move on to prepping the neckband and the sleeves. So for the neckband, I'm going to fold it in half and press it, and it's folded in half wrong sides together, and it's not going to stay completely flat. You'll never get this fabric to press brilliantly, but what you want is to give it kind of a bit of a memory that is where the crease needs to be. So I'm going to press that one in half. So this is actually staying pressed quite nicely, but it has that memory in it now, so that when you come to install it later, you won't be fighting to try and fold it over. The next thing that we're going to do is the hems of our sleeves. Now there's a little lip at the bottom of the hem, and that's how much the seam allowance is. So again, you're going to turn that up and press it all the way along. I'm also going to finish this on my overlocker whilst it's flat, because that's just so much easier. So I'm going to get that done now. So again, you're never going to get this stuff to press perfectly and stay in place, but it's to give it kind of a memory so that when you come to hem it later, it's on your side and is trying to behave itself. So I'm now going to finish this raw edge on my overlocker. If you're not overlocking things and you don't have one, you don't have to do that. This fabric will not fray. If you are finishing your sleeve with an overlocker, you're not cutting anything off, you're literally running the stitches along the very edge. So there's still the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance there, which we're going to turn under later. So next up, we're going to install the neckband, and we can basically get rid of our pattern now because we have finished with it. We're not going to use this pattern for any more steps in this dress. The first thing that you want to do with your neckband is sew it into a round. So I have sewn it together at the short ends by 5/8 of an inch. This is where the folding comes in, the pre-pressing comes in handy. So you want to use this as one side and then mark the other half with a pin. You then want to bring that pin you've just put in to the back seam, and then you want to mark those halves as well. Now this is the neckline of the dress, so the very first thing that you want to do is put your shoulder seams together and find the center point of your front and your back. Now because you've got a lower front than you have back, your side points are not going to be your side seam, the shoulder seams. So you put the 2 points that you've just marked, the front and back center, together and pull that so it comes over to the side like this, and that is your quarter point for your to match up with your neckband. As you can see, the shoulder seam is quite a way back from that, so you're going to mark both of those in as well with a pin. So next up, we have to pin everything together. You want to make sure that you're pinning your seam in your neckband to the back of your dress. Don't pin it to the front, you will cry. Okay, so I'll take the pin out of my mouth. What you want to do is you want to pin the raw edges of your neckband to the raw edge of your dress neckline. So you want to have the right side of your dress and then the neckband pinned to that. You're going to match up all those points that you've just made. So this is the back, this is the front, that's the side, and that's the side. Now you drafted your neckband to be 4 inches smaller than the hole it's got to go into, so we're going to need to stretch it. So what I personally like to do, so this is just, these are two, this is the center and this is the side. I like to stretch out my neckband and kind of find another center point between those two and pin, and that way I've only got half of the amount of fabric to ease in smaller increments rather than one whole large piece to try and control under the sewing machine. So This is the other shoulder seam. This is the front. Oh, now I'm throwing pins on the floor. This is the shoulder seam. This is the front. There's a lot of fabric in there. So you stretch your neckband and kind of get the halfway point in there and pin. So again, you've kind of more evenly distributed the fullness around. Again, 2 more to do, so you should end up with 8 pins in your neckband if you're doing it my way. So this is the back, this is the side, pull the neckband so that it stretches to meet the size of the neckline of the dress, and pin. And then finally the last one, so this just helps me get my neckband in more evenly. Now we're going to sew it in. Okay, so you want to sew it in with the neckband up facing you, and you aren't cutting anything off. You are literally sewing this at, it's at 1/4 of an inch. You're going to line it up with the blade and not cut any of this off. I mean, shaving tiny bits off is not a problem, but you don't want to cut any large amounts off. If you're doing this on your sewing machine, as I say, it's 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so to start it, I place it under the presser foot at an angle and sew really slowly, because you don't want to sew over your pins. Once you've got it caught, you're then going to take the pin out, and what you want to do is, or what I do is, I get my finger, this is the dress, this is the neckband, I take hold of the neckband and I pull that taut, so the dress has got no pull on it at all, so the dress is lying flat, but I'm pulling on the neckband. To make that meet, and then you're going to sew up to pin, take the pin out, readjust everything, and again, so behind the next, so I've got the pin here and I'm going to leave that in place. I'm going behind the next pin. This is the dress, this is the neckband. I'm pulling on the neckband, I'm not touching the actual dress. And what you want to do is make sure everything is lying flat and all 3 raw edges are meeting up. So again, you sew up to, but not over the pin. Do not sew over the pin with your overlocker, you will cry. And again, readjust, come behind the next pin, leave the dress alone, hold on to the neckband, pull the neckband taut, and sew. You want to do this the whole way around. Just keep checking that all the raw edges are lining up. The last thing you want is to miss a bit and have to undo this, because undoing overlocking is a pain, as I'm sure we all know. So readjust, stretch the neckband, not the dress, line everything up, and so coming to the end. So again, pull the neckband, line up your raw edges. I'm making sure that the shoulder seams are facing towards the back. Okay, so when you get to the end, there's still going to be a bit that you need to kind of tug on. So this one, you're going to have to just pull the dress and the neckband together to get that evenly distributed. Now we're back to the start. So I I sew over my overlocking and I come off at an angle towards the centre seam. And I've left myself a really long thread tail because I'm going to pull that straight like that, chop it off so I have an even end, thread it onto a needle and bury it in my seam. You can knot these, you can use fray check on these, there are lots of different methods, but that's just my preferred way. So I've pulled the thread taut and I have threaded it onto a needle, and what I'm going to do now, kind of go in between the two bits of fabric and just about, that's probably 1.5 inches. I have to use a big needle to get all the threads on, but that then makes it a little bit difficult. So I'm going to pull it through, making this way hard. I'm trying to do this in the viewfinder. Let's do this in real life. Okay. That one. Not that one. That one. Okay. Chop off the thread, pull that out, and that's my thread buried. Now I am then going to top stitch my neckband down, which will help secure this stitching in place as well. For all the tutorials that I've seen on using an overlocker, I've actually not seen very many people say how they finish things, so that's just the method that I've kind of come up with after seeing a few different people say a few different things. Or this is how I finish all of my dresses. None of them have come apart on me, so as far as I'm concerned, this is good. So I'm now going to top stitch this using the same type of top stitching that I did on the yoke. I'm going to do it on the front and I'm going to top stitch this seam allowance down. So I'm going to run my foot along here and top stitch here to finish this neckline. And there we have our neckband installed nice and beautifully and flatly. You want to give this a press, and then the next thing that we're going to do is install the sleeves. So the next thing that we're going to do is install the sleeves, and we're actually going to do this flat. Now these sleeves are designed for a woven, and so they do have a lot of ease in them, and you will have to ease these sleeves into the shoulder seam that you have, but it's totally doable, as you can see here. So I'm going to pin one and show you how I do it. Okay, so instead of putting the circle in for the top of the sleeve, I actually just put a notch in, so I match that up with the shoulder seam. I then match up the single notch, which is at the front, and the double notches, which is always the back. I put a pin in the side seams, the notches, the center, the notch and the side seam, and then you want to ease in the rest. And as you can see, I've got quite a lot of pins in here. The beauty of this stuff is that it is stretchy, so if you stretch it whilst you sew, you end up with a very nice flat seam. Okay, so sewing at 5/8 of an inch, you don't want to sew over your pins, you want to sew up to them, and we're just going to, this bit is flat, so we're going to start, if I can find the foot pedal. So you want to sew up to the pin, take it out, and then make sure everything is flat underneath and kind of just put a little bit of pressure on it, so pulling, and just keep sewing. I want to do that the whole way around. Again, matching up the raw edges. Make sure your shoulder seams are flat and facing to the back. And there we have an inserted sleeve in and no puckers, which is what we want. So we're now going to sew up the side seams. Right, so I have pinned everything together. I've matched up my notches. I have pinned together my underarm seam. I have nested that, so there's one seam allowance going one way, one seam allowance going the other way. Kind of wriggle them together till they're tight in there and pin. Pin the rest of the notches. You want to match up your yokes as well. Make sure that they are together because you want those matching on the finished dress. I'm actually going to sew this on my sewing machine with a zigzag stitch so that I can check the fit, and this is the first time I've made this dress for myself, so I need to do that, because if I sewed this with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on the overlocker, it would cut off 3/8 of an inch of material, and if I need to make this dress bigger, I've then cut all that ability off. So I'm going to sew it with a zigzag stitch first, try it on, test the fit, and then see if I need to tweak anything. Okay, so once you've sewn up your side seams, you need to try it on and see what you think. I actually quite like this. It is a little, just a touch loose for me on the sides here and this sleeves, but like seriously a touch. So rather than sew at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to sew this at 6/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I can hem everything, and then this dress is finished. So gonna get that done. Okay, so when you have stitched your side seams after you've tried it on and got it to the correct size, you want to hem everything. So the pressing line that we made on our sleeve earlier is going to come into play here, and I'm going to show you how to do, or how I do these ones first. So I actually sew my hems from the inside, and because I'm using a zigzag stitch, that works. If you're using a twin needle, what you want to do is put your hem in this way up so that you can see where the raw edge is. Put a piece of tape on the side on your stitch plate, turn it over and run the edge, this edge, along where you put the tape, and in theory that should catch the hem for you, so you have your twin needling on the top and then you have your ziggy zaggy bit on the underneath. So I'm now turning up the hem on my dress, and I'm actually going to do this by hand and by eye because I want it to be just a little bit larger than the overlocking stitch. So I'm literally turning it over with my fingers, sewing about 2-3 inches, and then turning it over with my fingers, sewing a couple of inches and moving along. You can use wonder clips on this. I wouldn't pin it because pins, it can shift around with pins. Wonder clips are much more reliable when you're doing this kind of thing. Once you've finished sewing your hem, you then want to give it a good press, and once you've done that, you can try your dress on and admire your handiwork. So if you have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments section down below and I will do my best to answer them. I'm really pleased with this dress. It is super comfortable. I think it's really flattering. You could definitely have some fun with colour blocking this middle section. If I'd have done this in a solid navy, I think that would look really cool, and I'm going to be on the lookout for some fabrics that I can pair together to make a couple of dresses like that. I might also give the straight pencil skirt shape a try, so if I do, I will add that onto the end of this Sew-Alongs playlist. If you do decide to make this dress and you put anything up on Instagram, make sure to use the hashtag #ShawnMadeMeDoIt. I love seeing what everybody has been getting up to. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye!